Hi, welcome to the Real Estate Rundown for September 2024. I'm excited. There's a lot of things going on in the market right now, and I'm excited to talk about some of the changes in interest rates and the ways that it's really helping some of our consumers. So, we have buyers that have been on the fence for a while, and now when you revisit the numbers, it looks a lot better. And we'll talk about that. We have people where it didn't make sense to refinance before, there wasn't really any savings, and that has kind of flipped a little bit and it's continuing to get better. And so we're going to be talking about interest rates today and what those mean for you individually and for different segments of people. Um, Trump versus Kamala, we'll talk about for just a minute, not to get political, but just what's their impact likely to be for rates and housing. And then how do I know if it's worth it to refinance or not is also an interesting topic that we'll talk about. I'm also going to talk a little bit more about now, last month we discussed some of the changes to real estate agent commissions, um, compensation, and how that's impacting the market. And so I'll give you a little update on a few different deals and kind of how that's going. So I think that's an interesting topic. Now, first off, mortgage rates. If you look at rates and compare them to where they've been, even in just the last few months, since May, they've come down 0.87%. The 30-year fixed rate average right now is about 6.25, 6.3, somewhere in that range. And it was 7.22 just a few months ago. And so that's a pretty drastic change from its all-time highs like last October. So we're almost a year from that point when rates were averaging right at 8%. So that's a pretty big drop. Now, the thing that this average doesn't take into account is the different loan types. And so if you look at that, conventional rates are around that 6.25, 6.1 range. And if you look at FHAs and VAs, you're down in the fives, 5.6, 5.7% on average for those government type of loans. So here's one. This is just a headline that like Redfin ran this the other day. Falling mortgage rates mean housing payments are now more affordable than a year ago, despite higher prices. Now, let me just show you an example. I wonder if I can make this bigger. Here we go. So this was an actual example. So we had a buyer that was pre-qualified for $450,000 a year ago at 7.25 rate. Monthly payment was going to be $36.23 on an FHA loan. Now, fast forward to just Monday of this week, and we updated the numbers. The rate had dropped to 5.75. So that's what, a 1.5% lower interest rate than it was back then, which drops the monthly payment $31.87. So that's $436 lower monthly payment for the same exact house. Luckily, and he was a new construction buyer, so as he's looking at houses, he went ahead and pulled the trigger on it, saved $436 a month. The flip side of that, I thought it would be interesting just to run the numbers and say, okay, he was qualified for $36.23. So how much would that get him at today's lower rates? And the answer is $512,000. So increased $62,000 on the buying power for the same monthly payment. Same monthly payment, $62,000 higher sales price now because of that drop in rate. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, coming back to the market, now this is local Yuma market stats. The national stats look kind of similar in most areas, but in Yuma, if you look at this chart I'm showing you, basically what we're looking at here is the orange is new listings added to the market, and then the blue is sales. So you can see all these places where the orange is higher than the blue. That means we're just not selling as many homes as are being added to the market. So that leads to more inventory, especially if you watch like CNBC, they talk about, oh, housing inventory is starting to build up. So, and you look at this and you say, yeah, there's quite a few months here where we're adding more than we're selling. So that's got to add up to a lot of inventory, right? Well, here's the current active listings by price range as of this morning. You can see, like, if you're trying to buy a house for 225 to 250, you have 55 homes to choose from. 350 to 375, there's zero. I mean, there's just a few. So, and these are broken down in $25,000 ranges here. So there's not that many, but here in Yuma County, so you try to find a house for under 300,000, and there's just a few hundred homes to choose from. There's just not that many out there. It's really not that much inventory. And if you look at this in another way, is months of supply. So we say, okay, take those numbers and divide it by how many homes tend to sell and how many months would this run out. And you can see in almost every price range, which is right around 3 months or less, where if we didn't add any new listings to the market and we continued selling at the same rate that we currently are, which is dismally slow, we'd run out of houses in like 3 months in most price ranges. Now, some of the upper ones are different. You could see like the 400 range, even the 325 to 350, you have almost 5 months of supply. And some of the upper price ranges, you have a little more supply, but still it's just a few months. On average, a 6 month supply is kind of a balanced market where it's balanced between buyers and sellers. And we're not at 6 months in any price range, even the upper ones. Average sales price also, I'm thinking that as interest rates come down, it makes homes more affordable, more buyers enter the market, and we're likely to see home prices continue to rise. Even as that's already started to happen, but not at such a rate that it's made a huge difference to prices. And this average sales price year over year, this is just so you look at August of this year, the home price went up 4% compared to August of last year. And pretty much this entire year, it's been in the positives where home prices are selling for higher than they did last year at this time. That's not saying much because the market was pretty stagnant in 2023, but at least it's not going down. We're not seeing home prices drop. Here's another view of that. Sorry, I was going to sneeze. Here's another view of that. If you look, this is year by year. This top line of blue is 2024. So you can see our average sales price every single month this year is higher than it was in the previous 3 years. So home prices are just continuing to go up, not drastically, but they're holding steady and slightly increasing. I've gotten a ton of questions lately, back to mortgage rates for just a minute, about the upcoming Fed meeting. So September 18th, so that's next week, the Fed is pretty much locked in that they're going to cut interest rates. And so what does that mean? How much are they going to cut? Well, speculating this is just pointless because I'll definitely get it wrong. Even the experts are getting it wrong. But a lot of people don't know that there's actually this thing called the CME group puts out this tool called the Fed Watch, which is basically the stock market betting on what the Fed is going to do at the upcoming meetings. And this changes every day. This is this morning. It says target rate. There's an 87% chance that they're going to cut rates by 0.25%. And there's a 13% chance that they'll cut by 0.5%. So this was, I think, 30% chance of cutting by 0.5% just a few days ago. And so these are always changing and fluctuating a little bit. And so most likely they're going to cut by 0.25%. Now, this tool here shows you that the market has kind of already priced in that 0.25% cut. That's what we're expecting. We think rates will be cut by 0.25%. And so we already have in our interest rates, that's why we've already seen our rates come down over the last few weeks, is because we're expecting that. And so when they do cut rates, say they come out and they cut rates by 0.25% next week, I don't think we're going to see a drastic impact to rates right away. It's going to be over the next months to a couple of years where we'll see this kind of trickling down effect of rates dropping. And I'll come back to this in a minute and show you a couple other things about this, but that's my take on it. Okay, now this is mainly for real estate agents, but even if you're not a real estate agent, if you're in the Yuma market and you're interested in market stats, this is going to be a super interesting class. We're bringing Nora Guerra from Freddie Mac to Yuma, and she's doing some research in the meantime. This class is on October the 10th at the Yuma Arts Center and Historic Theater. It's a free class, and even if you're not a realtor, if you're interested in the market and you'd like to come, then let me know and I can get you signed up. Also in the notes from the show today, I'll give you the link so you can register online if you want to. I think it's just an online free registration. This is going to be super interesting. I've heard her speak before, and it's awesome. And the fact that we're able to get her to come to Yuma and zero in on Yuma market stats is pretty cool. I'm pretty excited about it, and this is going to be a good class. So I just thought I'd throw that out there because she'll be diving into some Yuma specific market stats that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Okay, let's talk about buyer agent compensation. So basically what this is earlier last month in August, this settlement went into effect that says that real estate agents have to change the way that they're compensated. So let me pull this back up. So basically, offers of compensation through the MLS are not allowed anymore. So, and before an agent can show a house to a buyer, they have to have a signed agreement about how the agent's going to get paid. So this is a little change from before, where it was just kind of assumed that the seller would cover the buyer's agent commissions and fees and compensation, and that's not necessarily the case anymore. Now, there's some misconceptions about this. Sellers are not prevented from paying buyer agent commissions. In fact, it's normally what happens is the sellers agree to pay it. It's in the seller's interest to offer compensation to the buyer's agents because it gets your house out there. It gets your house exposed to the most potential buyers because most serious buyers are working with a real estate agent. Also, buyers are not prevented from compensating their agent either. So if you're a buyer and you don't want it wrapped into your sales price, the seller won't agree to pay your agent. You can still pay them directly. It just can't be advertised openly on the MLS what the seller's going to do. So it's caused a little confusion. There's a few ways that this impacts loan financing. If you're getting a loan and you're just scraping up just enough money to put your down payment, and you're counting on the seller paying all of your closing costs, and then you also want them to pay your real estate agent fees as well, then you need to make sure the seller is willing to do that. And if they're not, then you might end up needing more money out of pocket than you're expecting. So you just have to figure what type of loan you're doing, how much down payment you have, and how much money you have to put towards closing costs and things, and then you structure the deal accordingly. And the professional realtors in the market, they know how to do this, and we work together closely with them as lenders in order to make sure that we're putting deals together that work for both sides. There's a few different strategies and ways of putting this together, and down in the notes I'll give you a link to, I have a few videos and walkthroughs on strategies for this. I don't want to go into it in super detailed today, but let me just share with you an example of one that we had recently. So basically, 414,000 sales price. The buyer's going to put somewhere between, but good with like 15 to 30,000 out of pocket. Now the seller agreed to pay 2% towards the buyer's agent compensation, and the buyer's agent was charging 2.5%. So in this case, what happened is that extra, can I get this where you can see it, where my head is not in the way? Well, that extra, here we go. That extra money towards the buyer's agent was $2,074. Pretty much is just included in the closing costs. So in this case, the buyer had all these closing costs. The seller was paying a $10,000 credit towards compensation and costs. So all that together, the buyer ended up needing $15,000. Now in this case, they ended up buying down the interest rate and putting extra money down anyway. So it just wasn't an issue. But with enough down out of pocket, these kind of things it's just part of the deal. As you're buying a house, you need to factor in all of your costs, including agent compensation, appraisals, inspections, title fees, your homeowner's insurance, property taxes, all that kind of stuff factors into your consideration of how much you need to buy the house. So hope that makes sense. So I put together a web page. It looks like this, has a bunch of little videos and scenarios and things like that just to try to be helpful. The link will be in the notes for today's show. Okay, so Trump versus Harris on interest rates. This is an interesting question. A lot of people are wondering. I've had a lot of people say that they're waiting for the election to happen before they pull the trigger on buying a house or refinancing and that kind of thing. So what's likely to happen? My take is, regardless of who wins, mortgage rates are going to be sliding down and moving downward over the next several months and couple of years. So all the forecasts are pointing to, regardless of who wins the election, rates are going to be coming down, and you might have an opportunity to either qualify for more of a house, get a lower monthly payment, access your home equity and take cash out of your house with a lower monthly payment. There's just lots of different things. Both of them have different policy decisions that they will make that can impact things back and forth. But at this point, it's just I don't get into politics too much, because right now I think in order to get elected, anybody will pretty much say anything. And so that's what I have on that topic. Okay, so what do lower rates mean to me? So if interest rates come down, really there's three different things. Either you might qualify for more of a house, and we kind of I guess talked about this, but you qualify for more of a house, back to the scenario of the guy that was at 450. Now you could qualify for the same monthly payment with a 500 and what was it? 512 or so, $62,000 more qualification. That's a pretty big deal. If your payment was going to be too high last time, and so a lot of people are in this boat where you got pre-qualified, but your monthly payment was going to be higher than you wanted, and so because of that, maybe you lost motivation and you didn't want to buy a house. Well, it might be worth revisiting that pre-qualification now, because with the lower interest rates, your monthly payment might be more manageable than it was before. And this is a dynamic that's not likely to last for the long run, because as home prices continue to go up, then that's going to offset some of the savings that you have by having the lower interest rates. So right now, I believe is kind of a short little window of opportunity where you can still take advantage of the home prices that are as low as they're likely to be in the future, and take advantage of the savings and interest rate that's already come. And if rates drop further a year or two down the road, then we can refinance it and save you money that way. And if you already bought a house in the last 6 to 18 months, it's definitely worth talking to your lender and looking at whether or not it makes sense to refi. So because of that, let me just show you a couple of rate refinance options. Now, we have a program for our past clients we call a rate redo program, where we don't charge any lender fees. There's no out-of-pocket cost, and we get you the same loan term. So say you're 5 years into your loan, and now we're refinancing, then instead of starting over on another 30-year loan, we can do a 25-year term. Or if you're 3 years in, then we do a 27-year term, right? So it's a flexible option. That way you're not adding to your loan term, you're not adding to your loan balance, you're just taking advantage of the lower rates and saving money without any out-of-pocket or upfront cost. So let me show you this. Here's an example of how that might look. Now we have a house that's worth $352,000, and this person owes $243,000 on a 7.25% interest rate loan. Now this one was only about a year into it, so 29 years left on the loan, and the payment's $1,988. Now under the rate redo program, what we would do is a 29-year term, as you can see here. The interest rate can drop to 6.75. This is a scenario from a week ago or so. So the interest rate drops, that's what, 0.5% savings, which saves you $78 a month. Notice that the loan amount coming in was $243. The loan amount going out is $243. So we're adding 0 to the loan amount. We're adding 0 years to your loan balance. We're dropping your interest rate by 0.5%. It saves you $78 a month. So that's a pretty great deal. And that's 78, not that exciting, but over 2 years, that saves you about $2,000 with 0 cost. Another option that you would have is to drop the rate even further. In today's market, rates in the 5s are definitely doable. So a low rate refi might look like this, where you drop the rate to 5.5%. Now notice here, we are adding money to the loan amount. You're not having to come out of pocket with anything, but we're adding money to the loan amount, and it drops your payment to $1,735. So you save $253 a month. But remember, what we're doing is starting over on a 30-year term. So we're kind of stretching out another year. We're adding to your loan amount, but by dropping your interest rate further, it's saving you more money monthly, $253 a month. And then another option that you could have, and there's lots of different ways you could refinance, but something else you might think about is, hey, you could, with that lower interest rate, you could actually shorten your term and take a 20-year term, and your payment only goes up, $47 from what you're currently paying because of the reduced interest rate. So you could shorten your term without raising your payment much. Sometimes it's 0, and Um, or we could do a 21 or 2-year term in order to zero that out. But that's another thing to consider. So, how do you know if it's a good deal to refinance or not? Well, what I look at is a couple of things. First, you want to try to make sure that the refinance is going to pay for itself in 2 years or less. So, this chart on the left, where it says savings over 24 months and the orange bars, this shows you that even so, by saving or by taking the rate redo refinance, where we dropped the rate by 0.5% and added zero closing costs, then you come out 24.43 ahead. Now, I think the savings in interest was 1872, so the rest of that is increased amortization. So you paid down your loan balance further because of the lower interest rate. Now, by taking the low rate refi, it's not that much difference over 2 years. You save another $400 or so, because remember, now we have to factor in all the upfront costs and say, okay, before it's going to save you money, you have to pay back the money that it costs you up front, not out of pocket, but in adding to your loan amount. And so we factor that in. Now, eventually that balances out where, okay, you're saving $250 a month, but it costs you a few thousand up front. So you just divide it out and eventually it will break even. And then in the long run, it's going to save you a ton of money. You can see over here, the green is how much interest you'll pay over 15 years. It's not that big of a difference when you do the rate redo. I mean, it's only 0.5% lower interest rate, but by dropping the rate even further on the low rate refi over 15 years, you're saving, I mean, what is that? 235, 178 is $57,000 in interest. So it may have cost you a few thousand extra up front. You're adding to your loan balance, but over time it pays off. So everybody's situation is different. We have to run these calculations individually on each person, and depending on credit score and loan balance and what type of loan you're doing and that kind of thing, what your goals are for the future, then we figure out whether it makes sense to do one program or the other, or nothing, and maybe wait longer. There's lots of things to consider. So but there's lots of different reasons to refinance. I guess I kind of hinted at this before, but lowering the interest rate is not the only reason that you refinance. Some people want a lower monthly payment. I mean, that comes as a factor of a lower rate, but shortening your term, getting cash out. We didn't talk about that in any of the examples today, but accessing your home equity, there's lots of different ways of doing it, either refinancing, doing a second mortgage, a home equity line of credit, and we have some really cool options for those ways of accessing your equity if you don't want to get rid of a lower interest rate loan, but you still need access to some of your equity to pay off some higher interest debt, do home renovations or that kind of thing, buy investment properties. There's some really cool options and ways of doing that. Removing an ex-spouse or a cosigner. Sometimes you might have needed a cosigner when you bought the house, and now they're ready to come off so that it's not impacting them anymore. You can do that with a refinance, freeing up your FHA or VA entitlement. There's just lots of different scenarios where it makes sense to refinance, even if the interest rate's a little bit higher or it's not saving you money in other ways. So, all right, I hope that helps and makes sense. I'm trying to make myself available. So if you want to look at your individual scenario or you have any questions, I'd love to talk to you about it. Please reach out to me directly. And down in the notes, we're going to have, you'll be able to download the slide deck and links to all the other resources that we talked about. So thanks a lot, and I hope you have a great day.